Previously on the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast.
For December, we're going back in time. Not quite as far back as the Timeless Children.
Right.
But close.
Okay.
I'm picking a First Doctor story, or stories.
Okay.
And we're going back to the Telos range for a pair of novellas that are set before the events of an Unearthly Child. We're going to be reading Frayed by the ubiquitous Tara Sams, and also Time and Relative by Kim Newman. And both feature the First Doctor and Susan.
Cool.
And now our story continues.
Welcome, everyone, to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. This is Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London. How's it going, Matt?
Happy December. It's going pretty well. I don't know if it's because of the recent November elections. They may have had something to do with it, but I don't think I'm going to fully relax and breathe until after January 20th, but doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm in an area that is going into a less severe lockdown next week, so yeah, it's just... Yeah.
I think we have another 7 or 8 months at least of hanging on tight before we have widespread vaccination and all that stuff.
Yes, yeah. I mean, apparently vaccination is going to start in 10 days' time over here.
Oh, well.
Yes. Nothing's been approved yet, but apparently we're getting ready for it. And they're going to be using the one that can only be moved 3 times before it deteriorates beyond use. So.
Oh. Well,
dearie dear.
Some kinks to work out, I think, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, 7 or 8 months, but yeah, at least there's a horizon in sight now, which feels better.
Yes, yeah, it feels less like The Stand at the moment, but yes. All right. Okay.
I've got some Doctor Who news to share.
Yay!
So,
good. Let's do that.
Just a brief note that Century 21 Dalek comic strips have been restored and reprinted recently by Panini. This was done as a book-a-zine format. So in the US, it'll be carried by Diamond Distribution, and it's also available digitally. So that's rather exciting to see those get reprinted, and hopefully some of the Third Doctor strips will follow, depending on how successful it is. Have you been watching the Dalek animated series at all?
No, I haven't as yet. Have you caught any of it?
I've seen the first 2 episodes so far, and I'm kind of getting into it. I've also now read the Titan Defender of the Dalek story, so I'm starting to see how some of this is piecing together, and it is kind of interesting to see the Daleks as individual characters, like the strategist and the executioner. It's like, oh yeah, there's the one with the red eye, and there's the one that's all rusted from traveling back in time, so that's been fun. Ooh, the mechanoids appear in episode 3 of the Daleks animated series.
Really?
That's exciting.
54 years on. Excellent.
I do have a bit of a response to some of the criticisms I've been hearing recently about Time Lord Victorious, so might want to get my soapbox out here for just a moment. One of the complaints that I've heard is that it's focused on past Doctors and not the current Doctor, except that the 13th Doctor does pop up here and there in the story, and I can't say any more without going into spoilers, but if you hear this complaint, it's more than likely that the person saying it hasn't read or heard any of the story yet and is just going by the covers. And then along those same lines, another criticism I've heard is that this is just focusing on the 10th Doctor, and I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of the story that's out there from the Eighth Doctor's perspective. There was an article recently in DWM that went into some of this and talked about how Time Lord Victorious was shaped in part by focus groups and surveys that recommended a very prominent role for the Eighth Doctor. So if you go by the number of releases, you could argue that Time Lord Victorious is more of an Eighth Doctor story than a 10th Doctor one.
In the grand spirit of new adventures and deadlines being missed or there being production issues, one of the Eighth Doctor stories has been delayed by COVID-related issues at the vinyl factory. Where there's a deal with Asda that it's going to be released on vinyl at the same time as it's released digitally. Due to social distancing regulations, it can't be made as quickly as they'd planned. So I think that's been delayed till like March or April. And I think, what is a Doctor Who spin-off range without something being delayed until after the event?
Yeah, yeah. I think the in-person event was delayed as well.
Has it?
The stage show.
Yes, that's fair enough. I'm not going to the theatre.
The third complaint that I've heard is that this, was kind of when a lot of this is set during the dark times, and isn't that around the same time frame as the recent Timeless Children's story? And doesn't that kind of tread on the series proper? But another thing that was mentioned in that article is that a project like this, with all the licensees, takes 4 or 5 years to get off the ground. So if you're going to be manufacturing statuettes or action figures, those can take years to produce with tooling time and production and getting them shipped around the world. So that, there's just tremendous lead time involved. So I'm guessing that Jodie wasn't even cast when this project was started. So, all right, I'll put my soapbox away. That was just, I've heard quite a bit of that like on Twitter and some other podcasts. So I just wanted to put my oar in.
Well, the BBC would have given final approval to all of this. So they would know. I don't think it would be necessarily as contradictory. Certainly it didn't occur to me. I've only read one of the Titan comics and the GWM strip. From what I've seen so far, I do not see anything that makes me think, oh, this is a contradiction.
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to reading that, or reading quite a bit of, and probably more sampling the audio as well, over the Christmas period, as well as Dave Rudden's Christmas book, which I have sitting on the bookshelf.
Lovely.
So, yes.
So what do you have for a show and tell this month?
What do I have for show and tell? Well, we mentioned Jodie Whittaker earlier. There's a long-running series over here called Who Do You Think You Are?, which looks into the family history of celebrities, and I think there's been an American spin-off. I'm sure there's been spin-offs in other territories as well. And they were only able to make 4 episodes this year due to events, and Jodie was one of them. And she's got a very, very interesting story. Digs into her Yorkshire roots. It brings up quite a bit of family history that I don't think she's particularly comfortable with necessarily, or she's not necessarily proud of, let's put it that way, or at least certainly at the very least has very conflicting emotions about. And I think she's incredibly game for doing it. And also particularly given that she very much prizes her privacy, because we don't know the name of her daughter. Nor should we, really.
I didn't even know she had a daughter. So
yeah, she has a daughter. We don't know the name. That's fine. That's fine. We don't need to know that information at all. And she looks into mining history in Yorkshire, and turns out, I'm not going to spoil it, but certainly there are a few things where, bless her, she realises that there are some interesting chapters in her history, and some members of her family may be regarded as villains by some.
Wow.
Which I think is, could be something that's a little bit of might be a worst case scenario, or certainly not. It's the sort of thing that if you're going into something like this, I imagine you kind of think, I hope there's no skeletons in the family closet. Oh, there's skeletons and a TV camera.
I remember watching the one David Tennant did several years ago, and really enjoyed that one. So I'll have to look for this.
No, it's very much worth looking for. As is as well, if you're looking for Doctor Who alumni, the Alan Cummings one is fantastic. It's a very gripping piece of television. But that one is definitely not family friendly. Jodie one is, but it's just, bless her, she goes through the ringer a bit. Anyway, right. What do you have? Do you have any reality television for us?
No, but I have a tell for you this month, and
Ooh.
I've been holding on to this one for quite some time and was thinking, gosh, I don't think I've ever shared this story on the podcast.
Oh,
So this is a very tenuous Doctor Who connection, as K9 shows up in this series, but I'm going to share the story of my one and only to date interaction with Russell T Davies. So wind back the clock 20 years to when I was at university in St. Paul, Minnesota, finishing up my second year, and the second and final series of Queer as Folk had just recently aired in the UK, but it hadn't aired at all in the US, and we were still a year or so off from getting a US version of the show. So I was trying to organize like a big campus-wide screening of both series in one of the fancy auditoriums and, done over 3 nights like a proper 80s miniseries. About 2 hours a night. And then the activities director of the university was going to step in and pull the plug on the event because we didn't have proper permission to show the series in the States, and it wasn't available for a myriad of licensing reasons, but I won't get into that. So that sent me into a bit of a panic, and I ended up digging through old Rec Arts Doctor Who Usenet messages until I found RTD's email address. And so I just went ahead and reached out to him. And he was very kind and a little surprised that I had found his email, of course. But he was very gracious, and he gave his permission to the university to show the series as, a free screening. And we did, and barring some vandalism to the amazing flyers that I created, because it was 2000 after all, it was a fantastic event, and the audience actually got bigger over the 3 nights as word of mouth about the screening kind of grew. I also made sure that we were showing, the proper widescreen versions with the original music, of course. So, years later when reading the writer's tale, there's a bit in there about how he had been using the same non-BBC email address at the time, which was tied to the title of one of his previous shows. And sure enough, it was the same email address that I had found on Usenet all those years ago.
cool. That's brilliant. Yeah. It's funny how I'm going to have to be very coy with what I'm about to say, because I happened to learn just from a previous job, the email address of someone that has worked on Doctor Who. And their email address was inspired by a character that they worked on. Yeah, it's funny because it didn't have any hint of their name, and the person had to spell the name out, and I could hear him on the other end of the line. I was like, "Oh, good grief! Why can I not be taking this phone call?" But
Very cool.
yes, but yeah, cool. That's so sweet that he was, and brilliant. I mean, it's not surprising that RTD would champion something like that, but that's fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Lovely story.
So this month we go back to the origins of the series and the first Doctor era. And we've got 2 novellas to read through this month from the Telos novella range. And that publishing company, Telos Publishing, published 15 shorter novellas from 2001 to 2004. And we've read a couple of these in a previous episode, Second Doctor ones. And as we mentioned last month, we're going to be reviewing these in story order as opposed to publication order.
Yes.
We should probably mention that in terms of like a an Unearthly Child time frame, there aren't a whole lot of stories set in this time. I think Big Finish has done a couple where there was it a stowaway on board along with the Doctor and Susan that formed kind of like a loose trilogy.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was a Gallifreyan mechanic named Stone, who they later drop off on Earth's moon.
Okay. Doesn't seem like a safe place to drop somebody off.
I think it's in the future when there's a colony there, but yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's a Big Finish story set on Quinnus, which was the planet mentioned by Susan in Edge of Destruction.
Yes.
As the place where they almost lost the TARDIS.
Yes, that's a Mark Platt one, isn't it? So, I think that's the only one of those that I've actually heard. So, yeah.
Kind of in uncharted territory.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely are. Right.
So first up will be Frayed by Tara Sams. And Frayed was the 11th novella published in the range, published in October of 2003, less than a month after the BBC announced the planned return of Doctor Who. And this is written by Tara Sams. And this is Tara's first longer-length story, having written for several of the short trips collections we reviewed. And we don't learn a whole lot about Tara in the author's bio. We know she was born in 1971, so she'll be turning 50 next year. She's described as a woman of mystery who enjoys sitting both behind and in front of the artist's easel, and is the vexed owner of an insomniac hound dog. So I wonder if Tara Sams and Jackie Jenkins from DWM are friends. They seem like two of a kind. Oh. Anything else you'd add about Tara?
Yeah, so Tara, as you said, she wrote for all of the short trips that we've read for the BBC. And her pieces have always tend to be quite character-focused, haven't they? And often feature the Doctor at kind of like arm's length. Yeah, nothing further to add, my lord.
The deluxe version of this book also features a frontispiece by Chris Moore, featuring a woman in a spacesuit with a wolf creature behind her. And then there's a foreword by Stephen Laws talking about discovering the show when it premiered in 1963, and how it set itself apart from other westerns and serial adventures at the time.
Yeah, that was a really interesting article, just putting Doctor Who in its place like that. Yeah, and the fact that the author could tell it was going to be something very different from the first episode, that it wasn't childish and juvenile, and it is rare. Well, at least I find you don't often sort of get people's like eyewitness accounts of that era and of the reaction of watching the show when it was originally coming out like that.
Yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And then the structure of this book, there are 15 Roman numeral chapters and 16 regular untitled chapters, and they're kind of interspersed, followed by a couple of afterwords. And there's like a DNA helix or globe illustration on the cover.
Let's get started.
So this opens on the planet Iowa. A human medical facility called the Refuge is under attack by these alien humanoid-like foxes. And these foxes have the ability to disintegrate and reconstitute their bodies, like a Thanos dust-style manner, I guess. And most of the security guards in this research facility have been killed over the last few months. And the medical staff has been recruited to defend the base because help isn't really coming. And coordinator William Mosley is entirely out of his depth, and morale is plummeting, especially when Mosley receives a reply to his distress call informing him that the nearest ship is still 5 months away. So in order to survive until the rescue comes, the staff are advised to barricade themselves within the refuge and retreat into Dream Changers, which is like suspended animation, and that's the same dreamscape that patients are treated in. However, there aren't enough chambers to support all of the staff as well as the patients.
So whilst out and about defending against another fox attack, an idealistic young woman called Juniper encounters a stranger outside the refuge, and the stranger is an old man who takes little interest in the battle, but demands he be allowed to search for his missing companion. Who do you think this could be? So the humans force the old man to go with them into the refuge, where he's kind of decontaminated, and his clothing is burnt to ensure that none of the disintegrated scraps of the foxes can get into the refuge. And in exchange, he's given the uniform of a doctor. And yeah, which is interesting. And so it's round about here as well, isn't it? Do we have our dramatic reading, or our first of 2 dramatic readings for this month?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. This reading is from Lucas Testro, who you may know Lucas from the Episodes of Death podcast, which is a mighty fine podcast that I have been on twice. Oh, actually, I've been in the feed 3 times now, in which he kind of talks about episodes that are underloved by fandom. And he's also got a fantastic project that he's doing, an audio documentary about Donald Cotton, which I think would be a very interesting listen. So if you go along to donaldcotton.com, it will take you on to his Patreon, where he's trying to raise money to help him kind of finish it off. And in fact, I think just 2 days ago he was interviewing Toby Haydock to do with it. So it sounds like it could be a very interesting insight into an era of the First Doctor that doesn't get quite as much attention as some of the others. Cool. Right. So shall we have a listen?
The strange old man emerged wearing the clothes. He didn't look happy about it. Juniper tried to compose herself. Ready to tell us who you are now? Am I a prisoner? He inquired haughtily. Sully scoffed. No more than the rest of us. The old man's face clouded as the orderly sloped into view from behind the door. Extraordinary, he muttered, staring at him closely. Yes, quite extraordinary. Sully shifted uncomfortably. Be sure to tell the coordinator that, won't you? Am I to be paraded to his office in chains, We're not prison warders, not even soldiers, really. Juniper tapped her finger against the insignia on the old man's lapel. See that? That says you're a doctor. A doctor? The old man gave a wry smile. Well, it's a noble profession, yes. Particularly so among my... His eyes narrowed at Salih. Among my people. Juniper looked at the stranger. What do you mean, your people? He means like the girl, said Salih. You've seen her? The old man rounded on him angrily. What have you done with her? I've not laid a finger on her, you old fool, Salih snapped back. Those creatures were chasing after her when I saw her last, and gaining. The old man fell very quiet. Juniper glared at Salih. Tactful, she muttered. I must locate her, said the stranger, stealing his fingers, gazing into space in rapt concentration. I must. What you must do is meet with our coordinator, Juniper told him. Now. We can talk about everything. Yes. Their new doctor was looking more agitated now. Yes, well, I suppose I must. He looked around as if deciding which route to take, then favoured Juniper with a slightly baffled smile. Perhaps you could lead the way.
Thank you very much, Lucas, for reading that.
Yes, thank you. It's interesting. Does this contradict what the Timeless Children has kind of implied? Because it seems like the Doctor was being known, well, not just the Timeless Children, but the most recent season. So the Doctor pre-Hartnell was being known as the Doctor. And I kind of think, no, it doesn't. It doesn't contradict it at all.
Yeah, especially if the memory was wiped and the Doctor maybe just gravitates towards that,
Yeah.
If anything, I thought it was maybe a little bit more contradictory with what Moffat had established about the Doctor choosing their name from meaning someone that helps others, and how, the Doctor was going down a path where the actual definition of Doctor had changed to being like a warrior that was hinted at in, was it A Good Man Goes to War?
Yeah.
Where the title was altered a little bit, but here it's almost by happenstance with being the uniform that the Doctor's given to wear, but it fits somehow.
It might also just be a coincidence, mightn't it? I mean, it could well be that he's already been called a Doctor, and that it's just a coincidence that he happens to be kind of put into a Doctor's uniform. But and it also does make you kind of wonder, what clothes was he wearing previous? Was he wearing Gallifreyan garb? Yeah.
Yeah, hard to say. Or whatever clothes he was wearing in the clip that they reused in The Name of the Doctor when Clara confronts him.
Yes. So, Moseley has, he kind of figures that this old man is a doctor. and also he's assuming that he's come from Earth to help him. And the Doctor as well is insisting that his companion can pilot the ship. And so Moseley sent out a squad to search for the missing girl, led by a bitter ex-military officer called Cass.
So while the search is on, Moseley asks the Doctor to help the refuge's only surviving engineer, Webber, named I think after, was it C.E. or Bunny Webber?
Yes.
Who helped create Doctor Who, and investigating recent power surges which threaten the stability of the dream chambers. And though he's uninterested in doing so, the Doctor needs something to occupy himself, and thus listens as Webber explains that the refuge is an experimental corporate facility for the treatment of future deviants, otherwise known as children born with genetic traits which will result in them developing criminal tendencies. So you have kind of like a mutant strain of DNA in this case. And also a little bit of, what was the name of that movie that predicted...
Minority Report?
Yeah, Minority Report with like the future crime. Yep.
Yeah, and Orphan 55.
Oh, yeah. That as well. That classic. So the Doctor examines the base's power supply, determines that the fault originated within the dream chambers, and theorizes that the power surges are being caused by an active telepathic mind within the dream matrix. So the Doctor enters a dream chamber himself in order to test out his theory, but finds himself trapped in a shared illusion with two adult humans whose mouths are fraying away from their bodies, kind of like in a no mouth, kind of like a Matrix or the episode of Doctor Who, The Wire, where they took away their mouths. And then he's transported outside the building containing the two humans and sees a baby crawling towards the building while monsters lurk in the long grass. So more of this vision.
Yeah, so the Doctor is unaware that his companion is also inside a dream, because she'd fled through a broken panel on the exterior of the refuge, trying to escape from the foxes. and she's found herself in this kind of like weird matrixy kind of environment, and she's unaware that her surroundings are an illusion, and she makes her way to a kind of a strange building where a cat takes her along to a young girl named Jill who's hiding in a cupboard. And Jill's mouth has been disintegrated / frayed off, but she can speak telepathically. And she decides to name the Doctor's companion Susan in honour of Jill's late mother. I don't know. I mean, how often do you name people after your mother? Is it something you do frequently? I mean, I'm just saying, I've never heard of a character do that before.
No, me either.
It does seem like a very strange thing for her to do. I mean, Susan is a bit of an odd name, particularly given the rest of the Gallifreyan names that we've heard. So it makes sense it's a nickname rather than sort of short for Suzanne Vachalula or something. But it seems like a shoehorn, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, not long after the, you're wearing a doctor's uniform. I will call you the Doctor. Oh, I'll call you Susan. I mean, it feels a little clumsy. So Jill and her friend named after her mother have various discussions, and Jill thinks that she's heard Susan's telepathic screams, and so apparently she's rescued her from the monsters so that Susan can help Jill's best friend, someone called Olmec. And Olmec used to tell Jill stories, including the myth of a death god called Hunahu. Is that Hunahu? Yeah. Okay. And elsewhere in Jill's dream, there's two figures, her mentors, who she hates, are about to meet Hunahu for themselves. So, is Hunahu a death god in a kind of like in a mythology outside of this? I mean, is Hunahu kind of? I don't know whether Hunan is from an Earth religion.
It's like a Mayan death god, I think.
Okay.
Is where it came from.
Okay.
But
cool.
Olmec he was like the zookeeper or the janitor for the colony. And I think it's revealed that there is something like 200 different children that were put into suspended animation. So they're like the colony's children when the attacks began. And it's kind of like with the structure of this story with the Roman numeral chapters, those all take place in the dream world. So you're only getting the bits with like Doctor and Susan in the regular number chapters. It was kind of cool when, we're back to a dream world chapter, but then, the Doctor wakes up in the dream world. So you get that crossing over between the chapters, which is, I thought, kind of cool. Yeah. So then outside the dream world, so back in the real world, Cass, who's this soldier who's kind of gone off the deep end, she orders a squad, including Juniper, to search for the missing pilot in the ruins of a crashed spaceship, though fully aware that there will be nowhere for them to hide if the Foxes attack. This is exactly what happens, and in the ensuing havoc, Juniper is shot and injured by one of her own people. Juniper then calls the refuge for help, but when Coordinator Mosley receives the call, he disconnects immediately, kind of writing Juniper off and saying that she's doomed, and he doesn't want to hear her die, and blaming himself for his failure to save her and all the other colonists.
Yeah, lovely stuff.
Yep.
So Webber pulls the Doctor out of the kind of like this dream chamber because there's been another power surge that's sort of threatening his life, and the Doctor has become convinced that one of the patients is a powerful telepath who's taken control of the dream matrix. So Webber produces a list of patients, and the Doctor recognises the two people he saw in the dream, who are the two mentors that Jill has. These are Palm and Bane are their names, and they were injured during a fox attack, and they'd been placed in the dream chambers for treatment. But both have just died during the power surge that's just happened. And when Webber admits they were unpopular amongst the children, the Doctor theorises that this telepath is probably a child who'd drawn Palm and Bane into her dream for revenge.
And this is where the book goes a little bit in the Nightmare on Elm Street sort of territory.
Somewhat, yes.
Where you have attacks from the dream world and stuff like that. The Doctor also recognizes another face, which he saw carved into a door in the dream building, and Webber identifies this as Olmec, who was the keeper of the petting zoo and a popular mentor with the children. And when the fox attacks began, Olmec tried to rescue the animals and was mortally injured, and he too was placed in a dream chamber, but he's probably never going to awaken from his coma because his injuries were too severe. And although the children were never told of the details of the incident, Weber now recalls hearing Mentor Parm shouting at a child later about making up foolish stories, and theorizes that that particular child could be the telepath. But as Weber goes through the records to find out who was in the ward on that particular night, the doctor discovers that one of the dream chambers contains a patient with no records and non-human vital signs, and realizes that, that's Susan, or his unnamed companion. I don't think the doctor knows her name is Susan yet.
No.
But she's also trapped within the dream matrix.
He also doesn't call her granddaughter, does he?
You're right, not anywhere in the story.
Yeah. So Juniper and another character called Metty. Have we met Metty? I don't know if we have.
No, just another one of the orderlies that was conscripted into...
Anyway, so Juniper and the character that's not going to be particularly important, survived a fox attack and reports to Cass, who in turn reports to Mosley. And Mosley's relieved to find out Juniper's not dead and orders them all to get back to the refuge immediately. However, Cass tells the other soldiers that Mosley's told them to continue the search, and injects Juniper with an anaesthetic before she can protest. And Cass then shoots Metty, the person we mentioned earlier.
The red shirt, yeah.
Yeah, red shirt in the head. And has the squadron's bodies taken back to the refuge, claiming that Juniper panicked when the foxes attacked and shot the red shirt herself whilst trying to escape. And Cass has been sort of angered by Mosley's incompetence and intends to let the other soldiers believe that Mosley is keeping them out on a wild goose chase, stage a coup, and take control of the refuge herself. And now no one's going to believe Juniper if she says otherwise. But Cass hasn't put the bodies through decontamination before taking them actually into the refuge itself. And whilst Juniper is trying to kind of shake off the effects of the anaesthetic, she sees a fox form itself from the kind of scraps within one of the human bodies and walk straight into the refuge. So, one point I was going to say about Mosley is just from a kind of a British historical eye, and given that we've had a few interesting choices of name, I did wonder whether Oswald Mosley was going to be referenced here or conjured here, who was a British fascist leader in the 30s. No, it just seems to just be a character called Mosley. But so it was, it's one of these names that if I see appear in a story, I go, okay, are we going to be going anywhere with this? And it doesn't seem like we're playing off that at all. But, anyway, right, I shall let you carry on.
The doctor and Weber then report to Mosley that the power surges were being caused by this girl named Jill, who was a telepath so powerful that she was able to hide the full extent of her abilities during the medical tests.
Don't you hate telepaths like that?
Really good ones.
Yes.
So she had been drawing power from the rest of the refuge in order to create her own dream within the dream. But if she's simply removed, everyone within her dream, including Susan, will be killed. And Mosley nevertheless orders Weber to do so, but as he and the doctor protest, the fox who's gotten inside the refuge bursts into Mosley's office, which triggers an automatic alarm. The fox doesn't attack, lets them know that, it's there to speak and is waving like a flag of peace almost, and communicates telepathically that its people intend to destroy the dream chambers. And the doctor, who had suspected that the fox's ability to disintegrate and reassemble their bodies did not evolve naturally, now believes that they actually came here seeking help. So not all is what it appears with the foxes that are in the real world. Yeah,
we're starting to turn almost into like a Star Trek Generation episode here, aren't we? But, so before the doctor can properly communicate with the fox, Cass arrives, having heard the alarm, and opens fire on the fox. When the fox disintegrates, one of Cass's shots hits Mosley. And we're not entirely sure whether this is intentional or an accident. And so, as she'd kind of hoped for, she is now in charge of the refuge. And so she can do what she likes. Weber and the doctor try to convince her that it might be possible to make peace with the foxes. But she refuses to listen and tries to place them under arrest for treason. And the doctor kind of runs off to the dream chambers to rescue his companion, followed by Weber. And Cass orders a perimeter guard called Sally, who appeared in our extract.
In the reading, yeah.
Yeah, to find and arrest them both. And she discovers that Mosley is still alive and tries to smother him with his own pillow, but is interrupted by a bit of a crisis. The perimeter guards have all entered the refuge in response to the alarm, and the Foxes have taken advantage of this to attack and enter the facility. So things are going badly. It's fair to say.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but every time I read Cass's name, I kept thinking about Cass from The Night of the Doctor, that short, who the Eighth Doctor died for. But I mean, totally different character, and she's the villain of this piece, but similar sort of time frame and stuff.
Yeah.
So back inside the dream, and this I thought was a little clever because the narrative really tries to build against this by making it seem like Susan's now kind of realistic and grounded. So in the description at the outset, but if you've been paying attention to the chapter numberings, you know that, oh no, this is back in the dream. Susan finds her own mouth starting to fray away. So this is like Jill's dream interpretation of the mentor's attempt to remove the children's telepathic abilities. And Olmec's injuries are too grave for him to enter Jill's dream, and so the young girl has come up with a plan to lure him there. So she's built this building out of cheese, which attracts rats and mice, which then attracts the cats, which Jill thinks will then attract Olmec because he was the cat warden. And so the plan appears to work, but Susan realizes that from Olmec's childlike behavior that this isn't the real man, but kind of Jill's idealized dream manifestation of him. So furious, Jill summons Hun Hao, the death god, convinced that the real Olmec will sense that she's in danger and will arrive in time to save her life.
I mean, it's very much dream logic, isn't it? And also childlike logic. So, yeah, without wishing to give away too much of my thoughts, I mean, I found these scenes with in the dream world, I think, really quite effective at times. But we are not in the dream world now. Back in the real world, Weber finds a doctor getting ready to enter a dream chamber and helps him with this. Although he's by now realised that the doctor is not human and that he's motivated only by the safety of himself and his friend. But Weber does kind of know that what the Doctor's up to will still help everybody in the refuge. And the Doctor tries to explain his plan, which is to draw power away from the dreamscape and isolate it from the rest of the system. The Doctor kind of just goes into Jill's dream, but becomes overwhelmed by kind of like the power of the illusion, and is unable to complete his work. And outside the dream, Weber realises what's happened and completes the connections himself. My one thought is, it does seem very technological for the first Doctor.
Maybe he is, with age, he's becoming less technical as he goes on. But yeah, it did seem a little...
Yeah. I can imagine the fifth doing this a little bit more, but yeah.
So Salia realizes that Cass is out of control and is attempting this coup. So he tries to wake Juniper up with an adrenaline shot. And Cass is trying to get the guards to follow her orders, saying that she's the only one with a real military background, and expects too much from security staff that are trained to only stop children from throwing tantrums in this research facility. So Salia arrives and shoots Cass, and as the Foxes approach, Juniper takes this medical trolley packed with explosives into the corridor, burying Cass under the rubble and creating a barricade to keep the Foxes out of the dream chambers.
So this is the second story this year, hasn't it? In fact, a second story in about, 3 or 4 months, in which a souped-up trolley has played a pivotal part.
Oh, yeah. It is, yeah. And then when the Fox, which had snuck into the base earlier, reappears... drawing on Mosley's body to reconstitute itself, the Fox is finally able to communicate with the humans, and it explains that its people came here for help, drawn by the minds within the chambers. Unable to make others within the refuge hear their telepathic communications, they attacked the guards and the dream chambers out of desperation, reasoning that with no one to defend them and nowhere to retreat to, the medics would have no choice but to assist the Foxes. The battle only lasted this long because the medics were conscripted to defend the refuge, and the Foxes, seeing their uniforms, assumed that they too were soldiers. So they've been killing off the very people they were trying to make help them. And then Juniper and Salia surrender on behalf of the survivors, and the Foxes cease their attack.
over in the dream world, the Doctor finds his way to Jill's dream building, where Susan and Jill are being attacked by the death god Hunahu. At the last moment, Olmec arrives and banishes Huanu, saying that the death god's merely a story with no real power. And the dream starts to fall apart due to kind of Weber's actions in the real world. And as it does so, the baby from outside of the building arrives and begins to transform into a fox. And Olmec takes Jill deeper within the dream to a place of safety, while the Doctor and Susan escape to the real world. And when the Doctor awakens, he's surprised to find that Weber had understood what the Doctor's plans had been and managed to complete it. And he is joyously reunited with his companion.
And I was a little surprised, too, that Weber was able to follow the Doctor's logic. And it's kind of similar to how Sergeant Osgood knew how to operate a time and space visualizer back in Eye of the Giant. So then, kind of in the aftermath, or the cleanup, the Foxes explained that they had sent one of their own kind into the dream chambers to sabotage them, and this was the real reason for the power failures. And in fact, Jill's dream was the only thing keeping the system stable, and Jill is now an integral part of the dream matrix, and she can never awaken. However, the Foxes agree to leave the dream chambers alone and running, on the conditions the humans don't try to use them to escape. And within the dream, Jill and Olmec are reunited and can raise their menagerie of animals in peace. And since the humans have no option, they agree to help the Foxes to find a cure for their genetic instability. And then the Doctor and Susan leave the humans and Foxes to their uneasy peace, retreating into their TARDIS disguised as a boulder because the chameleon circuit's still functioning.
Yeah.
And as they leave, the girl admits that she's decided to keep the name Susan, and the old man admits that he also enjoyed having an official title and decides that this species, humanity, could merit further study, and it may even be possible for him and Susan to hide out amongst them for a time.
Yeah, and also as well, there's a comment a lot earlier in the story where the Doctor says about humanity that they all look the same to him.
Oh yeah, he's like, yeah, you all look so similar.
Yeah, it's just like, well, yeah, you don't look too different yourself, pal. Yeah, so that's the end of Frayed.
So what'd you think of this one?
Yeah, yeah, it's I was like, really, yeah, it was. It was all right. I mean, there were. I think I did wonder what it could have done with some more drafts. I think possibly. I think there were some good ideas, but I do think the bits in the kind of like the waking world could have done with a little bit more work, because I didn't find myself in danger of caring with any of the characters.
Yeah.
So, and particularly when you've got a bit of a distance between the reader and, the Doctor and Susan, I think we could really have done with somebody that was a little bit, could be a bit more of an audience identification figure. I mean, Juniper arguably serves that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was a bit of an oddity. I mean, the first person bits, they felt very sci-fi, and I did like the near future setting, and it had a bit of horror thrown in for good measure, but I don't know, it just stylistically with the dreams within the dreams and the security forces, it reminded me quite a bit of Sleep No More, and then also a little bit of Last Christmas too.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was as good as either of those stories.
Yeah.
And I really wish we would have learned more about the Doctor and his motivations for leaving. Despite being set in a really interesting time period, the story and the author don't have much, if anything, to add to the mythos. I feel like the glimpses we've gotten in audios do a far better job of delivering that pre-Unearthly Child experience. So I feel like it was a real missed opportunity.
Yeah, it almost feels like a selling point, doesn't it? It's like a gimmick. It's like, oh, it's set before an Unearthly Child. And yeah, it does nothing. I mean, it could just equally, apart from the whole point of how the Doctor and Susan got their name, it could have, Ian and Barbara could have just wandered off and got lost somewhere in the in the TARDIS, or having a bit of a lie down. Yeah, there's
nothing that sets it that time period.
Yeah, it doesn't even particularly need to be Susan.
Yeah,
I mean, sure, the telepathy bit kind of helps, but it doesn't have to be Susan.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I guess if I had to rate this one, I would probably give it a 5 out of 10, I would say.
Yeah.
How about you?
Same here. Yeah. 5.
I mean, it does have kind of this weird, dirty, almost sterility to the piece. More Solaris than 2001 for me, I guess, and it evokes a bit of the series The Expanse, the portion set on the research colony, if you're familiar with that show or the books. But it also felt like the story dragged the farther along it got, which for a short, for a novella, there's not a lot of room in that. So just it feels like a missed opportunity to me, I guess.
Yeah, it's a shame when you've got something that just echoes far better work all the time. It's just like, oh dear. But the dream stuff I did enjoy. That was its strength. So maybe it could have been a short story and could have been set almost entirely in the dream world.
Yeah, that may have improved it. I guess for the emotional resonance that I was looking for, I would refer listeners to a Big Finish Unbound tale called Old Morality. It covers a lot of that territory, and in that case it was the Doctor choosing not to leave Gallifrey, but you get kind of parallel timelines in that, and some interesting discussion and some great acting from Carol Ann Ford as well.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
But we have another one to to review. So
so don't turn off, dear listener. We have more, and this may be an improvement.
So the Doctor and Susan, having decided to study Earth, we find them in Time and Relative by Kim Newman. And so Kim Newman is an author, also an established reviewer.
Yeah.
Probably best known for, was it Anno Dracula? Kind of a retelling of the Bram Stoker classic.
Yeah, he often would also appear on TV a lot in the 90s, talking about kind of like horror movies and things like that. So certainly he was a name that jumped out at me before I'd read any of his fiction. I was just like, oh, wow, you've got Kim Newman to do it. It's not quite like getting Roger Ebert to write a Doctor Who story, but it's kind of, it's not a million miles away from that if Roger Ebert was a horror specialist. But it made me kind of like, oh, okay, this could be interesting.
And this book launched the Telos range, so this was the first book in the series, and it was published in November 2001.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I picked up my copy at Chicago TARDIS, which was my very first Doctor Who convention. And that's where I first met Nicholas Courtney, John Levine, and Richard Franklin. And I remember reading this in the car ride back up to Minneapolis. We had carpooled down together, myself, Robert Franks, Jason Tucker, and it was really fun. It was kind of my first experience with. I had attended a few science fiction conventions before, but that was my first Doctor Who exclusive one. So
cool.
The deluxe version of the book opens with a frontispiece by Brian Talbot depicting a scene in the story in Piccadilly in the West End.
The cover basically looks like a comic book panel, doesn't it? I mean, it has more of that kind of vibe than a literary cover, which I think it's an interesting look to go for. I don't think it necessarily matches the tone of the book.
When you say cover, do you mean the illustration?
Yeah, the Brian Talbot one. Yes,
sure.
Sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant. So it's not the worst illustration that we've ever seen in Doctor Who by any stretch. It's actually really, it's really good. Yeah, if you saw it, it wouldn't put you off from picking up the book.
And it also features both a foreword and an afterword by Justin Richards, which I think was important, as I think he was he the editor of the BBC book range at the time?
Yeah.
So it almost served as like an official acknowledgement that, yes, this is a new line of books that exists.
Yeah.
And Justin Richards writes in the foreword, he says, what better way to celebrate than settle down on a cold winter's night with a good Doctor Who story? Let the dark shadows lengthen and the snow pile up on the windowsill. Are you sitting comfortably? We'll soon put a stop to that. And the structure of this book, it's first person, and it's all, the subtitle is The Diary of Susan Foreman, so it's all from Susan's perspective, which is kind of cool. And the first entry is dated March 27th, 1963, and the last entry is April 4th, 1963. So the events of the novella play out over the course of a week or so.
Yeah, let's kick off. So, so we start off, say, in late March 1963. And so the character known as Susan and her grandfather have been in London for months and trying to fit in. Susan's chosen to attend school. And this has required a small amount of forgery on behalf of the Doctor of kind of like documents and stuff like that. And this is proven to be a little bit of a mistake. Because her teachers she's finding to be somewhat pedantic, and her form master is authoritarian, and the lessons that she's been getting are very childish for somebody of like her background and like what she's been exposed to, like technology and everything. And I think it's around about here, isn't it, that we get to reading? Yeah.
Yeah, our second of 2 dramatic readings for this month. And friend of the show, Felicity Brown, is our reader. And you can hear Felicity guest host back on episodes 58 and 59 of the original Book Club podcast. And I can't remember if I first met Felicity at a Chicago TARDIS or a Gallifrey One or Console Room, but yeah, she's a mainstay, a regular at the convention circuit in the U.S., and we get a chance to hang out every couple of weeks here in the Minneapolis version of Doctor Who Tavern, which has gone virtual during this pandemic, and hopefully we'll all be able to hang out again soon. So take it away, Felicity.
From the Diary of Susan Foreman, March 27th, 1963. We've been in 1963 for 5 months, I think. It seems like 5 months, but when we stay, it always seems like 5 months. You might not think it possible to have spent 5 months in 1963 when it's only March, but that only go to show how hidebound you are by the chronological system of ordering time. Continuity, bah, Grandfather said yesterday or the day after. Doesn't exist, child, except in the minds of the cretinously literal, like the Singlehearts who clutter up this planet. Trying to sort it all out will only tie you up in useless knots forever. Get on with it and worry afterwards if you can be pinned to someone else's entirely arbitrary idea of the day-to-day progression of events. Without contradictions, we'd be entirely too easy to track down. Have you ever thought about that? It's important that we not be too consistent. What Grandfather means is that he's tinkering with the box, and that throws timekeeping out. It's one reason I've started writing this diary. I can see that keeping the dates straight will be a major effort. I'll probably give it up. Grandfather says I always want to give up when things get difficult and then snorts about my generation. Hundreds of years ago, teenagers were supposedly angelic and contemplative, eagerly absorbing the wisdom of their elders. Hundreds of years ago in an alternate universe, perhaps. It's not as if he isn't a rebel, too. That I have to go to school is my fault. It was my idea. I thought it important to fit in, struck with some Pinocchio notion of being a real live girl. Grandfather made it tiresomely clear that he thought I was being silly. Faking the records, documents, and forms that got me enrolled at Coal Hill wasn't easy. Grandfather insists I stick by what he calls my immature whim, so that all that work won't go to waste. Little complicated tasks like forgery always get him enthusiastic. He loves fiddly problems that test his cleverness, and gets so caught up in details that he often forgets what the purpose of it all is. Grandfather got hold of an 11+ exam paper and made me sit it. I failed, by trying to argue with the stupid questions. Because of that, he put me in a secondary modern school rather than send me to a grammar, which means mixed boys and girls. Socially healthy, I suppose, although there are drawbacks. Being called by your first name, unless you're being shouted at. No uniforms, though there is a prehistoric dress code, no trousers for girls, and one everything lumped in science course, rather than separate classes for chemistry, physics, and biology. We're all expected to leave at 16 and get jobs. Most of us can't wait. I can be so stupid sometimes. School! What a pointless, miserable idea. It's absurd. My word of the week. I don't see Grandfather going out and getting a job on the buses or as a solicitor's clerk to go unnoticed among the indigenous population. Perhaps he just wants me out of his long white hair in the daytimes. It's not as if school could actually teach me anything. Yesterday in science, we spent 40 minutes establishing that magnesium burns. A revelation that rocks established beliefs about the nature of the universe to the core. I was tempted to strike one of Grandfather's everlasting matches and see what poor plodding Mr. Chesterton made of that.
Thanks again, Felicity, for doing that reading.
Yep, thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, so Susan's friends are Gillian and John. So names may ring a slight bell, as the first Doctor in the 60s comics travels with John and Gillian, who he claims to be his grandkids, doesn't he?
His other grandchildren that he doesn't talk about.
Yes.
Oh, wait,
yes.
No, that's Patrick Troughton.
Yes. Now, I read something saying, oh yeah, these are definitely not the same characters. And I do kind of think, I do wonder whether the Doctor could possibly claim them to be his grandkids.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, in the same way that Susan isn't necessarily his actual granddaughter. But anyway, right. So Susan suspects that Gillian has, shall we say, a very troubled home background. And John is nicknamed the Martian. He's always wearing spectacles, and his dad is a captain in the British Army. Keep a little eye on that fact; may prove relevant later. And there's a school bully called Francis Minto, who's making life miserable for these kids. One day, he swats the head off the snowman who Gillian made, but the damage is easily repaired. Susan doesn't feel she's fitting in at all, and her granddad doesn't really give a monkey's, does he? And she isn't too sure quite why, because she feels certain that their departure from home was an act of rebellion, but yet she can remember little about her time there. Also, one thing that I will just say that's quite key about the setting, we said it's snow and it's also March, whereas it is possible to have snow in as late as May. I mean, I was caught in a blizzard in April about 10 years or so ago. So this is set during the Great Freeze of 1963, which was a real event. Though in real life, the Great Freeze, I think, happened, I think it covered most of February. Certainly, I mean, relatives of mine that were around at the time don't often talk about their childhood, but I have heard tales of, yes, that was quite grim. And so basically, for a month, the UK was just below freezing most of it.
And the UK is, I mean, much more temperate than Minnesota. So having a snow from October to May is not uncommon here. So when I was reading, I was like, oh, March, of course. Well, yeah. If we're talking London, then yeah.
Yeah, it is quite unusual. Just make a mental note of that as well.
The other interesting name, in addition to John and Gillian, is that the authoritarian headmaster that was mentioned, his name is Mr. Grange, and I can only assume that's after Grange Hill and Michael Sheard's character.
Yes.
Even though I've never seen Grange Hill.
Yes, it must be. Yeah, I was picturing Michael Sheard because he pops up in Remembrance of the Daleks. I think you're right.
And I wish, I mean, even just in the opening, there's a lot of interplay between the Doctor and Susan, and I wish Frayed had more of that at work.
Yeah.
So Susan, whenever she tries to think about home and she thinks about her travels, she has some sort of mental block that fogs her mind and she gets these terrible headaches. So it's an interesting way in the narrative to not talk about Gallifrey. Whenever she starts thinking about home, she can only think about it in allegory, almost like the sections of The Timeless Children that were set in Ireland. That same sort of deal where you've got to have that reference point for her to even think about home.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the modern TV series of Doctor Who that's kind of, shall we say, borrowed from this novella.
And the only person that Susan's able to open up to is Malcolm, who's a little 6-year-old boy whose parents are from Trinidad. And Susan is his babysitter and looks after him on weekends when his mother works at the newsagent stand. And somehow, she's able to tell her stories as like fictional fantasies to children. She doesn't come up against that mind block. And so Susan finds that she can think about home if she's dressing it up in the language of the present. So she describes to Malcolm that her and her grandfather have skipped school and they're being pursued by truant officers, particularly one master who was the teacher's favorite, a dark bearded man whose career will be made if he brings them in.
Who could that be?
That doesn't really mesh up with what we've learned in the new series, but it is an interesting take on it that, maybe the master was one of the Time Lord agents that was pursuing the Doctor and Susan.
It could be the War Chief.
Oh, yeah. It could. Or is it Gaz, the woman in
the
most recent series?
Yes, yeah.
But even as Susan and the Doctor try to rebel, some rules from their society remain very hardwired into their being, including the most important one around non-interference. So she's kind of struggling up against that throughout the story.
So I've spoken about kind of like the Great Cold, and so we've got like fresh snow and ice on the ground every morning. The army has been called out to deal with the emergency, as I think actually happened in real life. But in the purposes of the story, it's because it's evident that this cold can't be natural. And the Russians are being blamed for this, with people saying it's a result of a top secret novellas. Is that right? Novorossiysk? I don't know.
No, Novorossiysk, yeah.
Yes,
I'm not.
the Russian project. Yes, and whereas the Russians sort of say that project is merely intended to help grow crops in Siberia, but instead they're arguing that the cold is because of American oil drilling in Alaska. So basically, yeah, no one really knows what's going on.
And I guess Novosibirsk is a real city in Siberia.
It is.
And I just looked it up. Local weather right now, it's negative 12 degrees Celsius there.
Nice. Yes. And also, I think the Ninth Doctor visits there. There's a Ninth Doctor novel that I think is set there with Captain Jack.
Interesting.
But, yeah. I might be wrong, but so no one knows what's causing the cold, and people are getting frightened. Yeah, and I think in 2020, yeah, we can go. Yeah, people will get frightened if something weird is happening and they don't know quite why. So Susan's grandfather has also noticed the cold, but he's treating it as kind of like almost like an academic problem. So it's not something that affects him directly, and this is worrying Susan because she thinks that this is how the people back on Gallifrey, she doesn't use that name, would behave. And if her grandfather has really liked people that they've escaped from, why did they escape?
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting question there. And Susan is able to, she also realizes that if her and her grandfather are ever discovered, that a trial awaits them and potentially mind wipes and separation from the Doctor. So she has that bit of foreknowledge too, kind of playing into the war games.
Yeah, well, and also the mind wipes as well play into the whole time as children thing.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm so glad that we've read this now.
It was a good time to pick it, I think. Yeah, it kind of fits in very nicely. So Susan, during all this, she's still struggling to fit in at school. And John and Gillian are noticing that their friend is even more odd than they had originally thought. There's a soldier on the street while she's watching Malcolm, and they're going for a walk, where there's a bit of a racist incident where Malcolm gets called a name, and Susan turns to the soldier's sergeant, and the sergeant chimes in and adds to the problem. So
yes,
I'm really glad this scene was included, though, because it highlights some of the casual racism that was still prevalent at the time and even now in some cases.
Yeah. Just to add a little bit of historical context, so in the 50s, I won't say exactly which year because I'm not too sure, but there was a lot of organised migration of people from the Caribbean to come over to the UK to make up for all of the workers who'd been killed during the Second World War. It was known as the Windrush generation, named after the boats that they came across, and Malcolm and his family would appear to be part of the Windrush generation, and there was a lot of awful racist attitudes that were being shown. Yeah. So this is what this is kind of like tying into, and it also you have echoes of this. Don't you remember to the Daleks with the that dreadful sign in the boarding house that Mike is staying in, the Ace visits, where it says "No blacks, no Irish, no dogs." Yeah. So.
Yeah. So after that incident, Susan decides to go out on the town with Gillian, and they sneak into a youth club washroom to dress up, looking older than they are, to try and sneak into this nightclub, and wearing, eyeshadow and lipstick. And so Susan and Gillian are all done up, and they try to go to a pub called The Pump, just outside of Totter's Lane. And there, Gillian flirts with a guy named Zach, who's in a motorcycle club. And he loses interest when Susan inadvertently admits that they both attend Coal Hill, signifying that they're both underage. And then Gillian is furious and storms off, and leaving Susan to return home alone. And on the way back to the junkyard, Susan senses an intelligence watching her from the ice. And the sensation seems stronger around the box in which she lives, and Susan begins to fear that the unnatural cold may have been caused by her grandfather's tampering with the box's controls. But the next day when she emerges from her room, she sees the grandfather standing in the yard, speaking to a wall of shifting, moving ice, and apparently promising to this ice not to get involved or get in its way as it decides to rid the world of a pestilence that is on its surface, these human beings.
Yeah, so it's an interesting take on the Doctor.
And with this intelligence controlling the ice, I mean, that in some scenes later on with some snowmen that we get makes me wonder if this is directly or indirectly inspires, the Snowmen Christmas special.
It's a hell of a coincidence, isn't it?
It is. It's very similar.
Yeah.
with kind of Clara in the Susan role there.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I would say about this is a little bit of an aside, but the cafe place where they kind of go into like the club washrooms and stuff like that, they also go to a Wimpy bar, which is kind of all quite exciting because it's a hamburger place and they've all kind of come over from America, and it brought me back to my childhood because. Like most of the UK had McDonald's, but Plymouth, where I spent my teenage years, it was dominated by Wimpy bars. And it was this very weird thing that when they had like 4 of them in the city centre, and if you went to other parts of the country, you were like, oh, you have McDonald's, you have Burger King, and then when your relatives or anything from up country came down to Plymouth, I was like, well, this is a bit odd. This is like how it was in London in like 1962. Like, oh, yeah, sorry about that.
I wonder if one of the Wimpy bars is in Cardiff still to this day, the bar where they shot the scenes with the 11th Doctor, supposedly in the U.S. diner, the same diner that they returned to with Capaldi, that kind of nostalgia U.S. Or is that different?
That's a different chain. So that's Ed's Diner.
Okay.
Restaurants.
Same sort of thing, though, where it's like
an
American...
I think Ed's Diner is a little bit... is it Ed's or Eddie's? But anyway, it's a little bit higher upmarket, possibly.
Upscale.
Yeah, a little bit.
There was another line where they talk about the Doctor and Susan being honorary British because they grumble, make tea, and ignore the men from the ministry. Whereas if they were honorary Americans, they would be noisy, smile a lot, and carry guns.
Yes, yeah. One other thing, I can't remember whether it's in this section, I think it's actually throughout the narrative, that Susan makes disparaging remarks about single hearts.
Oh, yeah.
Where she's just referring to kind of like regular people.
So, yeah, the Doctor and Susan both have 2 hearts here, and that's a bit of a contradiction in that I think there was a notion in some of the books that Gallifreyans don't grow a second heart until after their first regeneration.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to be the case here.
Though actually, all that we know is that Susan has 2 hearts. We're not actually told specifically to the Doctor.
That's true.
Anyway, right, so we've now got to the 1st of April, 1963. It continued as diary format, and Gillian seems to have forgiven Susan for a slightly interesting trip to the pump. And Susan, though, is far more concerned with the cold, and during a kind of a break time at school, the bully tries to smash the snowman again, and this time it comes to life and stabs him through the leg with claws of ice. And then it just kind of goes dormant again before doing anything more.
And you'd feel bad, except this was a pretty nasty bully, so...
Oh, yeah. So, think Biff, yeah? Mm-hmm. I think Biff from Back to the Future. Yeah, so this bully accuses Susan and Gillian of stabbing him, and so they're given detentions, and they have to write notes to their parents, and Gillian is furious when Susan tries to protest on her behalf, because Susan knows what her father's going to do to her. So the humiliation of, because Susan knows about what Gillian's
home life is like,
how fraught it is, the humiliation of that is worse than the punishment. After school, the boys are working below. Susan and Gillian have sent up some ladders to melt the ice away from the gutters.
With little handmade blowtorches, which I
Yes!
As you do, right?
Well, the 60s were a different time. But, yeah. And so the boys are supervised by a teacher called Mr. Oakhurst. But as the sun sets and the temperature drops, the snow comes to life and attacks all of them. And Gillian and Susan save themselves by breaking through a window into the school. But Oakhurst and the boys are all slashed to death by spears of ice. Lovely stuff. So.
I like to think that the window that Susan and Gillian smash and swing into is the same one that Ace smashes a few months later and swings out of the other direction.
Yes.
And that Cole Hill just has to continually replace this window.
Yes. Well, it also ties into the whole, I think it's class, isn't it? Where they have the memorial board for all of the past pupils at Cole Hill that have died in mysterious circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's quite nice.
And Cole Hill's caretaker also gets a reference, but it's not...
yes.
Too early to be the Doctor.
Yeah.
Inside the school, John is inside because his ROTC training was canceled due to the cold.
Do you know what that is?
Oh, yeah, we have it in the U.S.
Okay.
A version of it, yeah.
So it's Army cadet training, in case you are listening in a place that doesn't have ROTC. But anyway, yeah, sorry.
Oh, good call out. So the three friends, John, Jillian, and Susan, watch as clumps of snow and ice begin to rise up beside the snowmen to create soldiers called cold knights, which are these knights, I mean, picture like medieval knights, but, done up in ice style, so a lot more threatening than a cheery snowman might be. So when John's father, Captain Brent, arrives to fetch John, the knights start attacking his car, which crushes the captain's driver to death. Because, of course, like the brigadier has a driver driving him around, so does this captain. So Captain Brent holds them off with one of the blowtorches until John, Jillian, and Susan can open the school door to let him in. But then the shock of the whole incident kind of sends him into this weird state of denial where he just kind of sits there and can't comprehend that, he's dealing with something supernatural or outside of this earth. And then they shelter in place in the boiler room of the school until morning because it's one of the few warm places in the school. And they emerge to find that only a few children and teachers have shown up. Rumors are flying about strange events that happened during the night and an attack in Piccadilly Circus. And the snowman is still standing in the yard, and John tries to shoot at it with his father's gun, but the bullet has no effect on it. And then Susan realizes that the snow only comes to life when it's cold enough, if the temperature drops below freezing, and that can happen again at any time. So the adults, again, can't bring themselves to believe this story, but the kids take matters into their own hands and form into groups to try and make their way back home during this. Like a blizzard is starting up, too.
Yeah, so Susan tries to convince Gillian and John that her grandfather can help them. And so they set off for a certain junkyard, along with Captain Brent, who is still in somewhat of a state of shock. But the snow is starting to fall, and there's a wind picking up, and the temperature is dropping. So in the high street, so they encounter soldiers who are kind of claiming about Piccadilly Circus and like the snow attacks. Then 3 snowballs, which are kind of remains of the school snowmen, start rolling down the street from Coal Hill School, pursued by an avalanche which kills all of the soldiers. And cold knights form out of the snowballs, and they surround Brent and Gillian. And to John's horror, his father flings Gillian out of the way and then ends up being killed. Yeah, so Susan and Gillian managed to kind of get John moving again. Obviously, John's in a state of just absolute shock at all of this. And the storm is becoming worse, and even the small snowflakes are beginning to sting their exposed skin. And this is where the Wimpy Bar comes in, because this is where they seek shelter in one, where they're reunited with Malcolm, the little Caribbean lad, and Zach. And, there's also the vicar and his wife.
And Zach was from the motorcycle gang.
Yes, yeah. There's the Reverend Haig and his wife, who they help organise the youth club. They're also sheltering there, but they seem to have gone. Yeah, I suppose they are affected by events. As Mrs. Haig accuses Malcolm and the girls of bringing this judgment upon them with their loose morals and their heathen ways. Poor Malcolm.
Yeah.
And the windows start to crack from the extreme cold. And Mrs. Haig tries to grab a knife and sacrifice Malcolm as like a Old Testament style sacrifice.
Appeasement, yeah.
Yeah, and a waitress gets Malcolm away from her before she can do more than kind of tear open his toy. And Zach tries to comfort him. And together they all set off into the snow, leaving the Haigs to fend for themselves. It feels very much like a vignette from a horror movie. So it's you can see Kim Newman's background here. I think it's a very effective little scene.
Yeah, it's like a temporary shelter from the horde outside, and then turning on each other within that space. Yeah,
it's very The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
you must not only fear the horror outside, but the horror within. Lovely thought.
So Susan and her friends then leave the bar, and they make their way to the railway bridge, where they see lots of bodies of people frozen in the ice, and they manage to cross the rails without incident, crossing the platform because there's so much snow and they can just kind of walk across. But just as soon as they think they're safe on the other side, cold knights burst out of the station floor and crush Dolly, the waitress, to death. And then the others escape, only to find Totter's lane blocked by a wall of snow, which begins to grow teeth when Zach tries to climb over it. So they seek shelter in the bar from earlier, the pump that Susan and Jillian tried to sneak into, only to find that the cold has frozen people into their seats and burst open all the liquor bottles. And as Zach tries to break open the back door, John finally lashes out at Susan for his father's death. He's seen enough to realize that Susan's different from the rest of them and wonders what she knows about all of this. And then she is kind of forced to admit that she's from another world, but while she insists that she has no connection to the cold, she knows that her friends are never going to look at her the same way again.
So Zach finds that the back door to the pub was blocked by a wall of snow, but it parts for Susan, which allows her and her friends to kind of sneak into Foreman's yard. And it seems that her grandfather has made a deal with the cold. But that's not exactly a good thing. Because he's attached a device to the box, as she refers to it, which is making things easier for the cold. And he tries to explain what he's doing to Susan, but he doesn't seem to notice that there are humans with her, unless they actually speak to him directly. And it seems that the cold is an intelligence that inhabits frozen water. And it lived on Earth during the last Great Ice Age, but went into kind of dormancy as the climate changed. And it's been summoned back to life, perhaps by the Russian project, perhaps by the American drilling, or perhaps by both. Or maybe it was just its time to kind of arise again.
Or general climate change.
Yeah, I mean, things were in a bit of a state then. I mean, not that they're not in a state now, but yeah. So now it plans to cleanse the world of the infestation of human beings, but the old man's meddling with the box's controls was inadvertently drawing energy away from the cold whilst it was trying to reassert itself. And so he's now built this machine to correct all this. So if the Doctor chose, he could use it to kind of draw the animus of the cold into a single snowflake and remove it from this world. However, that would be interfering, and he cannot interfere. So the world is going to belong to the cold again, because the Doctor's got no choice.
Yes, it's kind of interesting how the climax of this story is almost needing to convince the Doctor to care enough to intervene. Like, that's the real thing that they're up against here. And I also wonder if the cold is somehow related to the flood from Waters of Mars, because they're both similar entities, and it'd be kind of cool if they are connected in some way, because they behave very similarly.
Yeah.
So then Susan protests and knows, that this isn't really a part of her grandfather's character, and he's just obeying a rule which has been kind of impressed upon him by others so deeply that he can't consider breaking it. And she realizes this because she's had the same programming, from the same society. Jillian threatens to kill Susan unless the old man acts, but even then, this threat doesn't shake his resolve. But then Malcolm, who doesn't really understand what's happening, offers to give the Doctor his stuffed cowboy figure, which has kind of been slashed open by the vicar's wife earlier. And he'll make the bad snowmen go away, and somehow the impractical design of the toy gets through to him, of all things. So the stuffed cowboy represents a living being which could never survive in the real world, and thus represents a feat of the imagination, an act of creativity, which for the Doctor means that the human race has an aspect of them, this imagination, which is worth preserving. So for the first time, Susan's grandfather sees positive possibilities relating to interference, and so he agrees to save the human race. So that's kind of like the stand up and cheer moment, I think, of the piece. And as the box exists in several higher dimensions, it's possible to encircle the cold through time and entrap it in a split second with the help of Malcolm, who, because he's a child, still has the ability to see things in different ways other from what they are, and can help provide the Doctor's device with the motivational or imaginative power it needs. So the cold attacks, but John, Jillian, and Zach provide the device with just enough extra power to complete its work, so it draws in kind of this animus or this intelligence of the cold, trapping it within a lump of ice. Susan's grandfather then departs in the box and takes the ice to Pluto in the far future. So the cold has a new and better home where it can expand freely, and thus all the ice and snow starts to melt, and the thaw has begun. And for the first time since leaving home, Susan's grandfather says he truly feels free.
I wonder if this ties into the Sunmakers at all. I don't think it does.
I don't think it does either, but I think the future inhabitants of Pluto will also have to deal with the cold at some point. So
Yes.
maybe that's a sequel story we haven't heard yet.
Yes, maybe. So there's no school for the rest of the week. Unsurprising, given that like a lot of people have died. Things will never be the same. So Gillian is now hanging around with Zach, who can protect her from her father. But neither of them are speaking to Susan, because Susan's presence represents things that they don't want to think about. And John is fascinated but disturbed by Susan. And he's going to sort of leave London anyway to kind of go and live with his mum. And Susan's upset by all of this, but understands their fear. And her grandfather is claiming that the cold might simply be ridding its world of an infestation. But it did feel very personal when they were being hunted by the cold through the streets. And also as well, her grandfather appears to have cleared the blocks in his memory, possibly because the rule of meddling was so deeply imprinted in his mind that breaking it has freed up a lot more of his memories than it has of Susan's. So maybe that's why he allowed her to go into the human world in the first place, so that she could learn about it and make decisions that he couldn't. Yeah, so maybe because of all of this, the human race might owe its existence to the fact that Gillian was kind to her on her first day of school. Yeah, so the TARDIS, or the box, as it's referred to, has been damaged by its journey with the cold. And Susan's grandfather sets to work repairing it, but he's not quite sure whether he'll be able to kind of control the journeys of the TARDIS in the future. Spoilers, he won't.
I think they also mentioned that it takes him like 5 trips or something.
Yes.
To actually get to Pluto.
Yes, yeah. But he knows he'll have to work quickly. Because of his meddling in history, he may well have attracted unwanted attention from home. And he thinks he's going to have to be specifically careful around Susan's teachers. Due to his Gallifreyan background, he knows that the sharpest insects on the planet naturally belong to teachers. So, that is pretty much where it ends. So, what do you make of all of this?
I liked this one a lot more than Frayed.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fantastic book to kick off the range. And unfortunately, it may have been a case of all downhill from there, because I don't know that any of the other books in the Telos range surpass this one. I think it's certainly a better first book in launching a series than The Clockwise Man or Time Worm Genesis was, and I think it's kind of up there with goth opera when it comes to that. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I wasn't entirely sure that the character of Susan as portrayed in this matches the Susan that we know from the TV series. But I mean, she's quite feisty and she has an edge to her that you don't see so much on the TV show, I would have thought. But it might be this is the kind of part that Carol Ford wants to play. So it's so witty, this book. I mean, there are quite a few moments I just laugh out loud, and there is a real teenage feeling about it. And I would happily read more stories of this kind of setup, even though by its nature you can't have that many more, because obviously attention will start falling on them. Though it is interesting that in Ian and Barbara, because Ian and Barbara make a couple of cameos in this, that they never mention, there was a time in which one of our colleagues was murdered by a snowman. It's not something that ever comes up.
Well, it's funny how they mentioned, too, that humans selectively forget, and something that RTD and Moffat picked up on in the new series to kind of explain away all sorts of invasion attempts and kind of collective unconsciousness.
Yeah, though, I don't know. I think Chris Chibnall would probably be wise not to try to go down that line now. Because I think, do you think in like 10 years' time you'll have forgotten 2020?
Probably not, no.
No. Well, in some ways, you kind of, certainly for me, I hope not.
You can also see like how people want to get past it too, in the sense of like, why doesn't anyone talk about the 1919 pandemic? Its impact isn't mentioned as much, and then you think about how the entirety of the Roaring Twenties was almost a response to that in this like collective party atmosphere, and I wonder if we're headed towards something like that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Hopefully not with another world war to follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta pay attention to things, but yeah.
Yes. Well, hopefully. But what else? There's so much wonderful stuff in here. I mean, even though we've given you a long version of the story, I mean, if you had access to both of these, I would absolutely point you to Time and Relative. Yeah, that's such an interesting story. And even though it's been riffed on by other things since, it definitely stands its own.
So how would you score it?
How would I score it? I think I'm going to give it a 9. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 9. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great fun.
I would say an 8 for me.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a very high 8, almost a 9 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, just fantastic and just a real breeze to read, especially compared with the other entry we read today.
Such a slog, Frayed. I mean, it was two totally different things. I mean, one of these was just like pulling my hair out reading it, and the other one was just such a joy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just okay. It was a joy with a lot of deaths in it, but I mean, it was it was great fun. So yeah.
Could this diary be the same 500-year diary that Troughton later picks up? Is there anything on screen that points to the diary being his specifically? What if it was always Susan's, and maybe he added to it later?
Yeah, could do. Yeah. Yeah, that's a possibility, isn't it?
Susan starts the diary, does it for a week, and then hangs it up.
Yes, realises it's a bit bad luck. The great thing about this is, by intention and also by accident, it doesn't contradict a lot about what happens later. Both in things that have been released later as well as events that happen to the Doctor and Susan later, apart from possibly the single heart thing. Yeah, it is great. And I'm just a little bit frustrated that no one has ever managed to persuade Kim Newman to come back and do another Doctor Who thing.
Yeah, or I'd love to see a Kim Newman big finish or full-length novel, yeah.
Yeah.
The range with like Stephen Baxter and stuff was an attempt to recreate this in a way.
Yes.
But it would have been great if Kim had been invited back for that.
Yeah.
And maybe he was.
Yeah, maybe he was. Maybe, yeah.
And this novella ends with an afterword by Justin Richards talking about how good the story we just read was, which I agree. And that it's also the Doctor's first steps towards assuming the mantle of humanity's champion as opposed to Time's champion, which is an interesting thought.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and it's certainly, he is coming along the journey that you see him when he's hanging out with the Tribe of Gum. Yeah, because this feels more like that early First Doctor than the character we see in Frayed, I would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Shall we move on to listener feedback?
Yeah, let's. Listen.
So we don't have any new email to share, but listeners, please drop us a line and let us know what you thought about this month's selections or any of the other previous books we've reviewed.
Yep.
You can reach us at andwbcpodcast@gmail.com. Chris, how about on Facebook?
So usual flurry of likes. We haven't had any comments this month, and haven't seen any recent reviews. But do please put reviews on like podcasts and the Apple Podcasts or various other things, because it just help. So
it does, yeah.
So do feed that algorithm so that other people can discover.
If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review. On the Twitter side, Matthew Vernon says he hopes that Panini releases a collected graphic novel of the Time Lord Victoria's story, Monstrous Beauty, that recently finished in DWM. And the Episodes of Death podcast states that they are eagerly awaiting Dave Rudden's Wintertime Paradox anthology. And Jack Alexander calls the Canaries short story brilliant. And Stormy Teacup 90 says Time Lord Victorious has been great, and he's seriously loving Titan's Defender of the Daleks. Regarding the final sanction, longtime listener Keith Say says, thanks for the lighthearted, happy-go-lucky podcast. And he remembers thinking that the book wasn't very Second Doctor-y at the time. Well, Grumpy 2000 says of the final sanction, grim. One word, exclamation point.
Yes.
And Shag says he loved the show and to keep up the great work.
Cool. Right.
So, Chris, I think that brings us to your pick for next month.
Yeah.
For a new year.
Yes. So I kind of thought, you know what? We've done novels, we've done novellas, we've done short story compilations. it's been a while since we've done a graphic novel.
Mm.
So I thought what I'll do is I'll take us to one of the golden ages of Doctor Who in comics, because you hear a lot about the 80s, and yeah, the comics in the 80s were great, particularly in the Colin Baker era. But I thought I'd steer us to another fantastic little run. Well, we're going to encounter the 7th Doctor, we're going to encounter the 1st Doctor, we're going to encounter the 5th Doctor, we're going to also encounter the 4th Doctor. We are going to experience the Panini collection known as Ground Zero, which was released last year, but based on from comics from the 90s. So an interesting selection.
Kind of a mixture of several different Doctors.
Yes.
So if you're keeping track at home, this is a episode not fitting into any particular Doctor in the cycle.
Yes.
Very cool. I'm excited to read that and get different stories with different Doctors. And it has been quite a long time since we've done a comic or review. Yeah,
done a graphic novel. But also I will say as well, folks, don't do any Googling if you've never read Ground Zero. Go ahead and get it and try and read it. Try and read it as I read it I read it in the 90s and reading it every month. But maybe don't do it that way, but try and read it without any spoilers. Yeah, it's a story that takes a few interesting twists.
I think I know one of those already, but I'll try to read it with that state of mind.
Cool.
Exciting. Very cool.
Yes.
Well, until next month, wishing you a festive and safe holiday season free from snowman attacks. This has been Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London. Happy reading, stay safe, and Merry Christmas to you at home.
Thank you for listening to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. Special thanks to George C. Music for use of their song Doctor Who Theme Swing Jazz Version. You can follow us on Twitter at ANDWBC Podcast and like us on Facebook. Help other listeners to find us by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. You can contact the show by emailing your thoughts to andwbcpodcast@gmail.com. And until next month, happy reading.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe Doctor Who's on New Year's Day. So at least that way they'll have some Doctor Who in 2021.
Yeah. What did you think about the announcement that they were cutting this season down to 8 episodes?
It makes sense, I think. I mean, given it is going to take longer and also it's going to be more costly as well, all the various COVID checks and things. Because you don't... It's one of these things. You can wait until kind of like the world's in a better place, but you might be a long time waiting. And if you are able to do it safely, and that's the important thing, if you're able to do it safely in a way that people are comfortable with doing it, then go ahead and do it. Yeah, it's going to be weird from a kind of like a story arc point of view if they kind of think, well, we think it's going to be 8, because like there are some people that have taken an implication that it could be less than that. I don't know whether I think they're going 8, and maybe they've got something on the back burner in case they're able to squeeze in a 9th.
Are you current on the Mandalorian at all?
No, we got Disney Plus last weekend. I have only watched one episode entirely of The Mandalorian. I very much enjoyed it, but yes.
Well, all I'll say is that series is able to tell quite a good arc in the span of 8 episodes.
Okay.
So
yeah,
if Star Wars can do it, then Doctor Who can certainly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Torchwood managed to do a very compelling one with 5. Yeah.